Lionsgate buried a John Wick prequel that would have changed everything, and the reason they killed it is something they never wanted you to know. In the summer of 2019, fresh off the record-shattering opening of John Wick, Chapter 3, Parabellum, the studio quietly put a standalone origin film into active development. A young assassin, a blood debt. The night everything began for Baba Yaga. It was real, it was funded, and then, without a press release, without an explanation, it vanished. You were never supposed to hear how close it came to happening, because the official story that Lionsgate simply pivoted resources toward Chapter 4 isn't the real one. The real reason involves a rival streaming deal, a franchise built on one director's word, and a decision that had nothing to do with whether the movie was good. Here's how it started. Chapter 3 had just pulled in $327 million worldwide on a $75 million budget, and Lionsgate's television arm was riding high on the success of building the Wickiverse, the studio's own term for turning one hitman into a cinematic universe. Chad Stahelski, the director who'd shepherded the franchise from a scrappy 2014 sleeper into a billion-dollar brand, was already deep into Chapter 4 pre-production. But behind closed doors, Lionsgate's development team floated something bigger, a theatrical origin story set decades before Chapter 1, following John Wick's recruitment into the assassin underworld. No CGI de-aging gimmick, a new lead, a young Wick before the coat, before the rules, before the Continental. This wasn't a rumor whispered at a junket. It was real, and it moved fast. By early 2020, Lionsgate's film group had a completed treatment and had opened conversations with two directors attached to other studio projects, according to trade sources tracking the Wick expansion at the time. A production window was being mapped for late 2021, time to keep the franchise's momentum alive between Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. Internally, the project carried a working budget north of $90 million, a serious commitment for a spin-off with no marquee star locked. Lionsgate's then Motion Picture Group chairman was reportedly the project's biggest internal champion, pitching it to the board as the Wolverine play, a standalone origin story that could run parallel to the mothership franchise the way 20th Century Fox had used its own anti-hero spin-offs. Then the complications started stacking up. Chapter 4's budget ballooned past $100 million, and Lionsgate's finance team began tightening the studio's overall slate, wary of spreading the Wick brand too thin before Chapter 4 even proved the audience wanted more. Stahelski, whose creative control over the franchise's tone had become non-negotiable to the studio, was reportedly cool on a prequel he wasn't directing, worried it would fracture the mythology he'd spent 3 films building brick by brick. And quietly, a competing pitch was gaining traction, a television expansion. Remember that signed treatment, the funded pre-production, the director's already in talks. Here's where it actually died. In 2021, Lionsgate finalized a deal with Starz and Peacock to produce The Continental, a 3-night event series exploring the Hotel for Assassins mythology decades earlier, the exact same, before it all began, territory the theatrical prequel was built to cover. 2 projects, same real estate, same audience, and only one had a broadcast partner already writing checks. The math wasn't close. A television deal came with guaranteed international distribution money up front. The theatrical prequel came with risk. Lionsgate's leadership chose the sure thing, and rather than admit they'd greenlit 2 competing versions of the same idea, they let the film quietly slip off every release calendar until nobody outside the building remembered it existed. The official line became, "We're focused on Chapter 4, technically true and completely beside the point. The prequel wasn't cannibalized by a bad script or a bad economy. It was cannibalized by its own studio's other deal in the same building. Think about what that decision actually cost. A theatrical origin story, built for the big screen with real stakes and real box office upside, got traded for a streaming miniseries that critics called handsome but inert, and that never expanded into the second season Lionsgate initially promised. The Wickiverse that was supposed to rival the MCU in ambition instead narrowed itself, chapter by chapter, spin-off by spin-off, back down to just Keanu Reeves and diminishing returns. We never got to see who young John Wick might have been played by. Never got the theatrical mythology Stahelski's own films kept teasing in throwaway lines and half-seen flashbacks. So the next time Lionsgate tells you a franchise decision came down to creative timing, ask yourself what deal was signed in the room next door. Because this wasn't the only franchise the studio quietly buried to protect a streaming partner, and the next one might be a title you already miss.